I'm going to be speaking briefly about the giant trees of long ago. Yes, you heard me right, giant trees. And I'm not talking about the redwoods. I'm talking about trees that you cannot even fathom how giant these trees were. We actually have these giant remains of these giant trees, which are actually tree stumps that are considered mountains. And we are told that they are mountains. Strange mountains like the Devil's Tower. But in fact, the Bible says something different. And below the presentation, below this video, in the description box, I'm going to give you a link that you can click on and watch the presentation of the physical proof that it's just a mind-blowing presentation. I hope that you will take a chance and watch this presentation that I'm going to put right below this actual video you're watching. Right below in the description box there will be a link. I hope that you'll watch it. It is just mind-blowing. So if you have your Tanakh or can get your Tanakh, pause this video and read along with me. We're going to be reading, I'm going to just give snippets of Ezekiel Chapter 31, and we're going to be reading passages from Daniel Chapter 4. So beginning with Ezekiel Chapter 31, it speaks about a giant tree called Assyria, one of many. It talks about the stature of this tree. Its stature pierced or surpassed the clouds. A giant tree that shaded, it speaks about it shaded nations. Nations huddled under the shade of this massive, monumental tree of gigantic proportions. It speaks about here that its branches nested all the birds of the heavens. All the beasts of the fields bore their young under its boughs. And in its shadow lived all the great nations, like I mentioned. It was magnificent in its height, in the length of its branches, because its stalk stood and went through the waters, reaching the fountains under the earth. The roots went under the earth to the fountains under the earth. It speaks about that all the trees were dwarfed within the presence of this massive tree. All the forests, the highest trees, dwarfed in its size. Just unbelievable chapter. I recommend you read this. It says, no tree, this is verse 8, no tree in the garden of God was its peer in beauty and stature. Later on we see that there was people, evil people, that cut down these trees. And it was basically destroyed. And that's why we had the remnants of giant trees today. That's what the presentation is going to contain, which is the presentation below in the description box. So please read Ezekiel chapter 31 when you get a chance. Now this is what it says. I delivered it in verse 11. I delivered it, and again this is chapter 31 of Ezekiel, verse 11. I delivered it into the hands of the mightiest of nations. They treated it as they befitted its wickedness. I banished it. Strangers, the most ruthless of nations, cut it down and abandoned it. Its branches fell on the mountains and in every valley. Its boughs were splintered in every watercourse of the earth. And all the peoples of the earth departed from its shade and abandoned it. Upon its fallen trunk, all the birds, or its stump, the stump remain of this tree. And that's what we're going to show in the presentation below. That's what remains, is giant tree stumps. So it basically speaks about that's what remains of the great trees. A tree stump. Tree stump after tree stump throughout the earth. And that's what the presentation below will contain in the description box. I hope that you'll watch it. Now we're going to go to Daniel chapter 4. it's going to say in verse 8, "The tree grew and became mighty. Its top reached the heavens, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its foliage was beautiful. Its fruit was abundant. There was food for all in it. Beneath it, the beasts of the field found shade, and the birds of the sky dwelt in its branches. All creatures fed on it." It also speaks about, again, in verse 10 and onward, that people of the nations destroyed these trees, cut them down, destroyed them, and left again the remnant of tree stumps. So this is just a brief description. Take a chance to read this for yourself. Again, it's Ezekiel chapter 31, many passages there, and also Daniel chapter 4. Read the whole thing. It is speaking about visions, but when you read these passages, and look at the presentation I'm going to present, or that I present on the bottom for you to watch, this is just going to blow your mind. I really hope that you all will take a look at the presentation right below this video. It is just mind-blowing. There's many secrets to this earth that we are kept from, that we have a right to know. I hope that this will uplift you tonight. Shalom.